there's a big change in education already naturally occurring. And I think it's a great time for Montessori to stand strong and brave.
Well, maybe we'll get started and people can arrive as they do. Well, we're very privileged to have this evening Barbara Gomez, and Barbara is the principal of St. Pius X in the country's only Catholic Montessori program. Can I say that? In Melbourne.
I'm in Melbourne.
Yeah, Barbara. So what's your Montessori story?
Okay, just to give people a little bit of an idea of where we're sitting in Melbourne, we sit in the northeast zone of Melbourne, about 11k from the city. And an interesting history because we started back here in the Olympics in 1956. So been in the part of the community for a long time. And with that, after the, if anyone knows that type of history, with the Olympics, there was a lot of housing built for the athletes. And then the government during 1956 wanted people to stay on. So that this corridor became a main migration corridor as well during the 50s. And this little school, I've only got 75 children at the moment. It's been sitting on that number between 75 and 85 for about 15 years. But back in the 50s through to the 60s, there was 1,200 children here at the school. So it's come through a very a big history. We also have the hospitals in the area. Most people would know Heidelberg through the Austin Hospital, the Mercy Hospital, and of course the Olivia Newton-John Cancer Research Hospital. So we're very much that. We also have La Trobe University sitting here. So when you have a precinct of a university and a hospital precinct, you're also a major corridor for overseas employment. So therefore we have a very diverse community. Once that housing passed on into the 70s, it was passed on to Department of Health. And at that time, temporary housing was also becoming very low standard of housing. And then that's how you create low socioeconomic areas. And that's happened across all of our capital cities. And Heidelberg West became part of that. Only less than a kilometre away, we have the elite of Heidelberg and Ivanhoe with their grammar schools. So it became a pocket of very diverse, as I said, community, one of great need, but one of also great education, art and environment background, because we also had the School of Arts out here for all those who know the Impressionists of McCummers and Robertson Street, and all started out here. So with why I'm mentioning all of that is that it was always a home for Catholic education to care for the family. So the school's had a very rich history and of being an inclusive school. So we have many faiths here. We actually have more non-Catholics at our school than Catholics. We've always served the community that way and been very invitational. And we're what we call a community partnership school. So we're very much an inner city school. And at the moment, we're part of, well, not a moment, it's been a 30-year Melbourne plan of where the old housing of grandma on a big acre block is now turning into high density apartment living. So becoming very unaffordable for our families and moving into a new style of suburb. So we're under renew as well. So that comes with lots of challenges of how do we continue to serve a community and be open to all and make things accessible and affordable. And that's really where I wanted to just couch that, because that's our greatest integrity of our vision of Montessori within a Catholic school, to be affordable and accessible to all. So you ask of my Catholic journey into Montessori. This school started the Catholic in its own self. And just for anyone who may not be aware of our, I represent Catholic Archdiocese Melbourne, one of 300 schools in the Archdiocese of Melbourne. And as I said, I'm in the northeast zone. But I'll just read just a very small snippet from Vision of the Melbourne Archdiocese. Catholic schools see learning as a journey of endless possibilities, where students are energised to seek meaning and explore questions about the world around them. Catholic schools have the desire to fully flourishing students across all religions, physical, cognitive, emotional, and social domains. We support students to grow in virtue, to embrace a view of themselves and the world that leads to peace, justice, and prospering of the world of creation. In this journey that is enlightened by faith, animated by love, and leading by hope. We look to honour the sacred dignity of each person, embrace difference and diversity, engage with the deep questioning of life, commit to achieving the highest standards possible, search for truth, build a culture of learning together, honour equitable access and opportunity for all, and make a difference in the world. Young people we serve call us to renewed and expansive hope, for they represent new directions for humanity and open us up to the future. So hopefully, Montessorians out there, you're hearing some of the words of Maria Montessori, a fellow Catholic. So Montessori naturally sits within our Catholic fibre. Our journey to Montessori, more specifically, started with CGS around 12 years ago in this school, and we ran programs through the parish, and the program ran within the school. It still does today. So we have a room called an atrium, which is a sacred space. For anyone who's not familiar with the Catechism of the Good Shepherd, in its very name, it's about the Good Shepherd, the one who enfolds and to care for you in all ways. So it's embracing, it's inviting, it's invitational, inclusive. So you can, hopefully you're hearing the words, Montessorian words of a sacred space, meaning a prepared environment. It's very much a prepared environment. The materials within the room are very much sensorial. Lots of work around the daily works. Creating busy hands, when busy hands of any of us, but especially children, busy hands mean we have a stillness of the mind, and therefore the spirit can connect with the child's spirituality, or the spirit of the child has time then to speak, or the child can hear their heart or their spirit, however you want to describe that. But it's around all of us knowing that when you're able to centre, and there's specific materials to keep busyness, so all those fine motor type sensory, making, doing, polishing, flower cutting, all those types of things, bread making, as well as watercolor painting, calligraphy, or your fine arts, textiles, as well as just playing with the aspects of, of godly play, playing scripture stories through figurines, and actually, if it's the part of the Mass and you're actually playing with the key elements of the items of the celebrations. So very hands-on, and hopefully you're hearing lots of aspects there of Montessori. So Montessori is very much been having a spiritual element to it, and a Catholic one at that. So move on from there. That was running, that runs within our school. It was also running within our families for early years. So mothers were able to bring their children in, even from 0 to 2, and 3 and 4-year-olds could come in as well, and they would have sessions during the week as well. So that has ran, as I said, for 12 years. So move on from there. We had parents in the school who were part of all of that program, and we started then to move our Montessori Catechism of Good Shepherd into a broader sense of a play group. And so we had several opportunities across the week of where children could come into other spaces that we provided within the room, and to have that tactile experience of sensorial, and to have that experience of becoming belonging of that early years framework. From that, in around 2015, we started then to have the conversation with parents again, seeing if we could then bring the education side of Montessori into the school. And we started again with the little ones, and we extended those programs of the 0 to 2 and the 3 and 4-year-old, knowing that they were also getting the Montessori sensorial and a lot of the other aspects of the Montessori program within our atrium. We then began introducing more of the specific educational Montessori materials into our play groups, our early years. The
So
little
Barbara,
ones, yes.
how long have you been personally involved with the school?
I'm in my 10th year here. So the whole time of the Montessori, I inherited the Catechese Good Shepherd. He'd been involved in the school for 2 years. I then secured that into the school and to support the parish by securing it into the school, and employed the staff of the parish over into the school. And that secured it, and that's where we made we took our way forward. So I mentioned that we were a family partnership school. So this is all come from parents and working very closely with families and what families were wanting. So that then led to the early years section. In the same time, early year facilities were being built within the area, and we partnered with one particular our closest facility. They hadn't built yet, and they were looking at within the area, and that's where we started our longer journey of a pathway. Prior to that, through Catechesis of a Good Shepherd, I'd already made all of our connections across the Montessorian world anyway. So that took us down to, we went to many conferences around Catechesis of Good Shepherd, and which we met up a number of times with our other Montessorian educators. But our network was as far out as down at Frankston there, and Melbourne Montessori, Mitcham. We've worked with Mitcham for many, many years. Templestowe Secondary, Northeast Montessori, and we were the only school sitting with a program within it. And so it just started to organically evolve between all of our connections. Our closest early years that we were working strongly with was Kelka down in Bulleen, and at that time they had the training centre for AMI. So that's how we all knew Amy Kirkman. And one of our parents at that time had her little one at Kelka, and that's how it just, they were coming up here to the early year playgroups on days that it wasn't kindy, and that's how Amy came into the space and how it just evolved into those children from our playgroup and those children from the new facility those parents from the new facility that had no connection to Catholic schooling or Catechesis Good Shepherd came in. So we started with that little working group 3 years before they were ready to come into school age. And we started with a group of 7 children. And so that's where we started. So we had our first cycle 1 started there in 2019.
What a journey. Barbara, Montessori is usually seen as a secular method of education, but that's not its history, right? The Catholic aspects, the religious aspects were very important for Maria.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. They were. When we through our research, actually there was a number of Catholic schools in the 60s around the Blackburn area that were running Montessori. 50s and 60s, and that was just a natural progression of what the religious sisters were doing. So a lot of the religious that came out originally from Ireland, Ireland and England, they came out, but then later on other orders came out, especially from Europe and Northern Europe. And those people from the Northern Europe, and people would know in the space tonight of from Maria's travel to North Europe. During those times of dictatorship in her sector of the world, and Spain and Germany, that's where she spent a lot of her time. Well, a lot of those religious orders came out during that time of European migration, and they brought what they knew of education in Catholic schools and in Catholic settings with them. So a lot of our schools did have it way back then, just a natural way of teaching. And why is because we always deal first with the health and well-being of a child. If you can get that right, and parents know this, if children can feel, have a good sense of belonging and being, they're feeling safe, they're feeling honoured and dignity, they know they're respected and heard, and they're within, adults and others that are nurturing them, but also allowing them freedom to explore, then they're ready. Once they have, that feeling of self and an aspect of who they are, and usually that's around that toddler stage, as we know, then it's really about the adult guiding the child and continuing to provide that safe environment. So you're hearing the words of us. So we always, in Catholic schools, it's not a choice to have we have a wellbeing arm. All Catholic schools have a wellbeing at the core. We have a wellbeing structure. We have wellbeing leaders. It's a directive. We have wellbeing arms to each of our regional and central offices. So everything starts right from enrolment within a Catholic school around wellbeing, and then the health of the child. We work really closely with our community health centres and our external services, our OTs, speeches, all the rest of it. And there's a wraparound approach, a safety net that comes around the child right from early years, because I work with my local council in that space. And it's not unusual for Catholic principals like myself to sit on those council early year committees to ensure that there's that flow through from maternal health through to early years, and then through to their primary schooling. We continue it, transition into secondary, and then of course our transition, we go right through to 25 actually. So, making sure our young adults are healthy as well. So we know that they're the main building blocks. So for us, we always, when we see behaviour, we never look at that certainly. There's expectations like all schools will have, but we always then we ask the question, what's the behaviour telling us? What's the child telling us in their well-being? And what are the words they're not able to articulate, but they're doing it with their actions? And so then groups with the parents will come around and have those deeper meetings. As the child is older and able to articulate, that child comes to the table as well. And we have that open forum of tell us how you're feeling. So it's a very huge part of our system.
Barbara, how does Montessori religious instruction in the catechesis differ from religious instruction in a traditional school?
Okay, it doesn't at all. So it takes what we do is we take we are guided by the child. Of course, you have the traditions and teachings of the church, the faith aspect of the religion we leave to the family. We partner with them, but it is guided by the family, and we provide those workshops and sessions and whatever outside of hours within the school. And whether it's in Catechesis, the Good Shepherd, or whether it's in a mainstream classroom or a Montessorian classroom, it starts with those basic building blocks of humanity. So what do we all look for in just as I said, around respect, responsibility, dignity? Then we look at the virtues. So what's the virtues of, kindness, courtesy, all of those, I could list them all off. And then we look at how do we enact that? So how do we enact? We enact through acts of kindness, as I mentioned, courtesy. We act through compassion, empathy. And so we work on those bigger aspects of inclusion as well, how we respect the individual, but how we strengthen as a collective. And then what's our responsibility to self and to other? So it's always projecting yourself out to the other, and then listening to the voice of everyone else and discerning, actions. But the actions are always that civil duty to make a difference and make a difference for the other. So it's very much the only difference from a government school is they would be looking mainly as values, whereas we use the terminology of virtue, We look more at the, that's where we'll bring in scriptural stories, but we also have many other religions. So we're a multi-faith school here. We have a very close connection with our Muslim community. The children enter into the mosque as well as we go. We've got a Buddhist community down the road that we know them very well, and they also come over to our space. We go to theirs, and we also go into our Jewish community. So the children, yes, are learning foundations of the Catholic tradition, even though they may not be Catholic, and that's okay. We also listen to what their family stories are. And even if they are of no faith, we listen to what is their story from a humanity point. And then we discern around that. So if we're looking about right judgment and we need to be making a decision, like we're just, working with reconciliation, because I have Aboriginal children here. And what would we do? What is our civil duty? What's our social action? What do we all believe? What does the government say? What does history say? What are we saying as a church? What are other churches saying? And we come to what we call a journey of encounter and provocations. So it's a lot of discussions and sharing and respect and understanding of others. And then you come to a common point. A big part of that is stewardship. So we are all part of creation. So a big part of my programs here are being outside in nature. So we work on classrooms without walls. So we have bush school where the children immerse themselves in a program out along our local waterway, which is the Darebin Creek. We sit on the Yarra River.
It sounds like it's, yeah. Barbara, it sounds like it's very much an integrated approach.
It is. It's very much. Sometimes people think back to how their own experiences of church, but the church sits even though we're part of the church and the church sits right on my property, and the children do go and celebrate and experience celebrations, liturgical celebrations and ways of expression, as we do when we go to iftar or when we go to our Vietnamese community for, Lunar Year or whatever. We understand how culturally things are expressed. It's around that making of meaning together. So there's no formal religious education lessons that we may all historically think of when we think about religious education. As I said, the faith journey, when you're preparing for sacraments of a Catholic family, they are done separately with the family through separate workshops with teachers outside of hours and within the parish, and the parish community take that on as an actual community. So yeah, it's very, I always get that question from people coming in for it, to enroll. Oh, what about religious instruction? And we said, lose the word instruction, because that's not the way it is anymore. Yeah. I don't know if that's been clear to anyone's questions or answers, but anyway.
Yeah. What was your past before you joined St. Pius? What were you doing before?
Okay, so I've been in Catholic education for 40 years. I was state trained. I did come from a religious background in my own upbringing. Grew up in a little country town in northeast Victoria. I had a wonderful childhood. I went to a little country school out in the mountains. We're only 13 students. The more I look back on it now, it was very much in the 60s. It was very much a holistic program around whole body, and there's a lot of Montessorian techniques that I look back now, and that was what my childhood was. Very much involved in the environment and connected to the environment. Very communal. Very much standing up as individuals. Lots of presentations and having to be curious and investigate. And you had nowhere to hide with only 13 children and one teacher room. Very creative, a lot of art and a lot of expression of your learning through different modes. And I do remember a lot of presentations where it was a lot of public speaking and there was a lot of social action. So if that was I had a very good, rounded education and a very deep understanding of community and experience of community growing up in a little country town. And I also came from an Anglican background. So, yes, I did Sunday school and all the rest of that. And when I look back at that, it was as a little child, before you were in the senior grades, all of my Sunday school was playing. So it was storytelling, it was playing with objects, it was retelling the story, but it was physically playing with tactile and making the scriptural scenes. And I think that's really interesting. Then from that, I was state trained, and at that time coming out, it was what they called limited tenure. There was a shortage of teachers across the government. There was a excess of teachers across the government sector right across Australia. And at that time, the Catholic system, the religious were leaving the Catholic system to take up hospitals and other social work. And a lot of us government trained moved straight in. We were called lay teachers back then. And a lot of the schools were the schools were still ran by religious. And they brought in us, as I said, lay teachers. That means we were non-religious. So we were the first of those teachers that weren't from a religious order, and that's where I started. It answered all of my communal. Even though it was Catholic, I was Anglican. I come from a higher Anglican church, so I understood it I still had to learn the nuts and bolts, of course, of the liturgy and things like that. But the philosophy and the faith base, I had no problem in assimilating with, and actually, it was part of who I was anyway. Anyone who knows the history of the Anglican and Catholic Church, of the history, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I've stayed ever since. I never worked in my state government system, and what made me stay within Catholic education was that community. And it was how the children were brought into community, and that resonated with me. So I've had 40 years and many positions within very big schools up to 1,200. I did start my teaching career in low socioeconomic areas in inner city, around the Ascot Vale area, Flemington area. Say that to people now, they don't think so, but that was where the immigration centre was. So I dealt with a lot of your Vietnamese coming in from that time, Cambodians, and then we had the uprisings there in South America. So I dealt with a lot of those immigrants coming in, so children coming in. Enjoyed those years very much. Left to have my own 4 children. Worked at my own local school, to which we built an outer suburban school, to which we built over a number of years, and I stayed at that school for about 12 years, and I was part of that school, that group. And I used to run the Catechism of the Good Shepherd sessions, for the children during Sundays and all that. So I've always been within this space. And then, as I said, I've been in really big schools, and my last school was also in a city, North Melbourne, which is low socioeconomic, and then I came to this one where I knew this is where this school was getting rebuilt, as in established, and I knew that's where I wanted to do the last 15 years of my career.
So was St. Pius your first exposure to Montessori?
Yes. Yes.
And so what kind of adjustments did you find you had to make?
Well, I knew the Catechism of the Good Shepherd. So I came into the school and I understood what the atrium was. As I said, I had that very experience in my own upbringing as an Anglican. Different wording, but yes, we had atriums as well. I knew the philosophy of the school. I understood where they were coming from. And I understood community and parent partnership. So 3 schools prior to mine, I had always gone to schools that were around the parent partnerships, working with parents very closely. So I aligned very closely with this school. So with the Montessori education coming in, it was just a natural progression from what we were already doing for families with our little ones and transitioning them in. And it was just those parents who said, how about we try having a classroom, our education model. It was a natural progression that we worked together, and we just brought it to life. So it was very much a natural. It wasn't an imposition. To my other parents within the school, I haven't had to sell it. So that's proof in itself that they understood. I just had to show them and articulate to them the bigger Catholic umbrella around it. And it was just a different philosophy around the materials, because all of our classrooms offer very much a holistic approach. And so yes, we're not a traditional school. I'm sure your question would have resonated with the traditional, what is class traditional school. We're not a traditional school. We are quite we have a lot of student agency in the school. We value that very much, even from the little ones. There's they have a lot of input into designing their learning with their teacher, co-designing. So we're quite a progressive school anyway, because we're very inner city, like a number of our Collingwood, Fitzroy, Carlton. It's because we're a diverse community. You only have to go a couple of kilometres and it's traditional, and with the grammar system, and all they look at is academic. So yes, I do sit on that fringe of where we're more of a city school.
So Barbara, how is Montessori seen by the rest of the Catholic education system? It's
interesting. Catechism Good Shepherd, they really were never really too interested, and unless, you know, as long as I was ticking off the RE curriculum and aligning. That was interesting. Our Archbishop, however, comes up there from Broken Bay, Peter Comensoli. He's very much a Catechism Good Shepherd man. He understands what's happening in our school very much. But from my central office, they've never really bothered themselves in one way. So with the Montessori, I had to put through my strategic plan, like I do for any learning initiative. So I put together we're into our second now, but my first 5-year strategic plan. As long as you can put your rationale and your intent as an educator, and you can back that up with everything around curriculum and compliance and assessment and reporting, and financing it and staffing it, resourcing it, then really they don't look for too much else. But it was very interesting, Mark, when I did put that in, back from Melbourne Archdiocese came their response, very interested in your strategic plan. Well done, good luck, but we won't be funding you. So that meant they weren't, as much as I had autonomy over what curriculum I was running within my school, and I had obviously convinced them that it was safe, they weren't going to invest in me. So what they were saying to me was I had to make that work out of the global funding I already had. I would get no extra funding. I had to make it work out of my staffing. And then I had to just be creative as a leader and make that work with resourcing and materials and making it sustainable.
Why is that the Catholic ed system hasn't had time for the catechesis?
It's an interesting question. It really is, because when you look at any of their documents, and they're beautiful documents, and it's a bit like Maria's work. When you look at anything else comes out, you only have to scratch the surface and dig into something, and you go, oh, there's a nice statement for the Catechism of Good Shepherd. So they're actually drawing on their own central documents from the Catechism of Good Shepherd, because it is the core of Catholic education. So of course they are. I just think because there was only myself and a couple of parishes that were offering the program, it wasn't en masse. Why give it attention? They're too busy doing everything else. So that was interesting. We did have individuals come and look. We did have individuals from university come and look. I've been chipping away at my Australian Catholic University sitting in East Melbourne, only about 10k from me, of their interest, of their students coming in. We've had some of that in the past, but I haven't yet drilled through to the key person who's going to take that up as a package and start offering an alternative to their students of why they can't do placements in a Montessori within a Montessori education setting or within a catechist or good shepherd. So it's a good question. I keep asking it. We keep inviting. And it's interesting, though, that my Archbishop, who actually has the last tick on everything, has come regularly. He knows us very well, and he gives us his tick of approval. So with that, I know I'm safe, I know I'm secure, and I know all I have to do is just make sure it's viable, and I make sure it's sustainable into the future. So it's good. They're good questions. They're all, and I'll tell you else, which is also quite comical. The Max is Melbourne Archdiocese Catholic Schools is simply recently rebranded because we've gone into a central mode of operation. So where the model of the parish priests had control over the schools, and then we collectively work together. Now it's central organisation, and it now aligned with all the other Catholic sectors across Australia. But in that, they've rebranded, right? So all of their new documents coming out, they sent their photographers out to a number of schools, and I've got a lovely uniform that our children did design by themselves with parents. And they knew I was doing, beautiful programs and had a lovely setting, and I'd just done a refurb of our new classrooms. And then that's all welcomed because that's all good news for the school. And their new documents come out every time there's a new one coming out, and they're coming out regularly now because this is we're only 2 years into this changeover. They've got our children's photos on them, and the photos they have are from within the Montessori room. Even our mathematical strategic plan for the next 5 years had 2 little prep children sitting there with their rods, and another one with cycle 2 sitting there with their golden chains, golden beads. I thought that was comical when it's a mainstream math strategic plan. So they like what they see, but they don't bother to come and understand.
Yeah. Barbara, what are some of the other challenges that you've had in developing the school?
So along with apart from just the, waiting for the changeover demographically, because we're gentrifying, and with that comes its challenges. So we've got families, who can't now afford, 1.2 for an apartment, and those big homes have gone. Public housing has moved out as well and being sold off. So apart from all of that, accessibility for our families who have to move into the outer corridors. It's also around staffing. Just getting the right people, because these schools need the right person. So that's really much the prepared teacher, because you've got to come here with your whole heart. It's the person first, and it's certainly the student first before the curriculum and assessment and reporting. And so with all of my programs and even my mainstream, we have to just sustain, and that's always been a challenge. So when you lose main people, you have that natural movement of you'll often get people stay in these communities for many years. So you have that, retiring out. And so you always have to have that succession training coming in of young teachers. So we're always very mindful of having enough of us more experienced, not in the learning and teaching, it's just in life, to be able to nurture and model and mentor and coach that young person into being a prepared person for the environment. That's across the board. Specifically to my Montessori program, we were going ahead with, a little group. So I invested in a teacher and an assistant for 7 children. So that alone, you go, oh, hang on a minute. State government only give, because we're funded by the government, and you only get a teacher per 25 children. So already I've gone out on a very big, brave limb, and 2 teachers for 7 children. That's and being financing that, because it certainly wasn't huge fees. Our fees are only $1,500. Okay, so I needed to sustain that, and we were going ahead well with it, and we were growing into our cycle 1 into cycle 2, and we were ready in cycle 3 to go to cycle 3 in 2024, and we were up to around 30 children in it. So things were starting to just bubble along, and we had a senior person in that role, and then we were bringing on others to mentor and to train up. Then COVID came along. And one of my main people that was succession training was my Catechism Good Shepherd teacher. And it's not about any judgment here at all, but with the mandated vaccinations, staff who weren't in agreement to the mandate then stepped aside from the system until that sorted itself out. And so therefore I lost my succession person into the cycle 1. I lost my Catechism of the Good Shepherd person. Okay, so that was already a hole. Following on from that, in Victoria was quite significant in how we dealt with the mandate and the whole COVID journey. So it was quite into 12 months, and there were a number of staff right across our system who were still sitting outside of work, but still employed. And at that point, the mandate finished, and they were able to come back to work in June of 2022. All should have been well of cycling teachers back in, but unfortunately that staff member never cycled back in. She hasn't returned to this date. What then you can't control out there is what's said on all the social platforms. And of course, it all went out there that, you know, she'd been dismissed and badly treated and whatever. And as I said, you can't combat that. You can only just keep your parents together. That then led to that group of parents getting quite unsettled. And they were already 3 of them on my school advisory council. They then came to me numerous times and asked if they could then have their own Montessori school advisory council. I brought in the system to explain to them that no, they were part of one system and one school, and I didn't have the authority to do that anyway. I simply managed the school, and they were already sitting at that highest level, and we were listening to them. And I think that on hindsight, they were just trying to secure, because there were scare tactics happening, that things would programs would finish, things wouldn't continue. With that often then, when people don't get the answer they want of autonomy, of what they see as their control, that little group of about 4 parents then went on and parents have the option to go to any school, of course, and we often help them relocate and all the rest of it, especially for the well-being of the child. They then went on this is all hindsight because we had no idea. They then went on a plan of leaving the school but not letting us know. Only 2 of them let us know, but in the background, across the Christmas holidays, they were still feeding out that the program was not going ahead. And in the same space across that period of the Christmas holidays of 2022, my senior teacher at Montessori and my learning support officer both resigned, even though they'd signed contracts back in August and had done all of the planning and organising of for all we knew that they were continuing, even the families. So with that, we ended up losing 16 children, and didn't even know that until day 1 coming back. Apart from the grief of losing families and children, for the well-being of those children, because the children didn't even know as well, neither did their friends. So we're left with 5 children in the cycle 1. So we had new people coming in that had no idea about that, because now I've got 4 Montessori facilities within walking distance. And I do bring them in to give the multi-age throughout the week. They didn't have any idea. There were some siblings in there of children in cycle 1, but within cycle 1, we've been left with 4 children. And one of those children should have been going into having a cycle 3 with a full cohort for next year of 20 plus children going ahead with her into a full cycle 3. So we've had to rebuild. So in the January holidays, it was a call out. We had already been calling out for a senior teacher during 2022 for our cycle 3. to be able, because then we're getting into the full cycle and the full program. So I'd already put out to across Australia and overseas for that. So we're already in the throes of employing a person for 2024. I then sought whether I could fast track that for 2023, which didn't come about. The system, because I have to be directed by the system said no to please employ people that were looking for work within the area. So I went for the next best choice of early years primary. There were no Montessorians that I could employ. So I went for 2 teachers of early years / primary degree. At least they'd have a early years understanding, and they would understand around the child and the child developmental stages. And one of those, a young graduate, well, they were both graduates, but one was mature age with her own grown children. Our young graduate's still with us, Grace, and she's doing really well. She's taken up some of the Montessori training with Montessori World Education Institute, and we have one of their trainers, Hayley, coming on in and doing one-to-one mentoring and coaching this term. So that's wonderful. And Grace is pathwaying through to the diploma, which is fantastic. Claire, she resigned after term 1, nothing to do with Montessori. She was more than willing to take it on, and she understood it to a deeper level because of her own being a mother of 2 and into her 50s. She was more than interested, but unfortunately she was caring for an elderly mother, and that there was just a conflict. She just didn't have the time to be doing the schooling as well. So we're back to principal now in the Montessori cycle 2, enjoying it greatly. The best thing that I've learned is I've always been close to the classrooms anyway. I do take lessons throughout the week in all areas of the school. But I'm really enjoying our cycle 2 children, and me getting closer to the Montessori as an educator, the materials, getting all the fine progressions of learning. So it's been a really good sharpening the sword for me. Mm-hmm. And I would guarantee, I would say that to any principal. I bet
that's a fun class to be in.
Exactly. Our parents who stayed on, the 4 of them from that group, not our new ones, we've left them be because they only know what they know. We're not leaving them in the dark. They're aware. But our 4 that hung on were from the originals. They had that. We all went through that grieving and abandonment, of course. Their children, for their children, because their children had lost friends, didn't understand. Anyway, we've grown through that together. Through many meetings, and also those parents saying, you always got to look at something as an opportunity, and what are the possibilities and what could be. So it strengthened all of us. It took us for a big blow. It strengthened all of us. My system came around me, as I said, as long as I can make it work, they trust me. They're not investing, so it's no loss to them. It's like, if you want to make it work, Barbara, fine.
Yeah.
And all of our early years now, there's no rules around entering each other's facilities. So we've got all of our partnerships up and strong. We've got collegial networks happening. We've gone back out into our Montessori collective as well. So I'm within the principal group, which is fantastic. Reached out to Montessori Australia, to all of your team, and did oh my God. And now it's like, but we've gone to a different level of understanding and of collegiality. So there's been a whole renewal. And
quite a turbulent
out
time.
Of the woods? No. I am fast tracking my overseas person. Hopefully they'll be here before the end of the year, experienced Montessorian, to which you need that. My parents are hanging on, knowing and trusting that we're doing, making sure we're doing the right things around the training. We did the quality assurance program with you guys with Montessori Australia. So they got good faith, and I think it's just transparency. But the best thing when we were just looking at it, because we meet regularly with the parents, and the children, because the children are in this space too, because they are the older ones of cycle. We've got 1 in cycle 3 and 2 in. We've basically got a grade 1, 2, and 3 and 4. So we've got 1 at each level of cycle 3 and one's in cycle 2. And one's in cycle 3. But we'll keep the 6 to 12 space, and we'll open up cycle 3 in 2027. That's my new strategic plan, when we have enough of a cohort. In the meantime, we're making that up by moving them around through our environmental programs to have cohorts and to have reading groups and things like that. So that's easy to do. But
Barbara,
I think the key to it, Mark, is the parents trust us and they can see that our children are really happy.
yeah, I think it says a lot about your strength as a leader. Despite that turbulent time, you stayed very steadfast. Have you, in your 4 decades, how have you learned to manage that work-life balance?
You got to have a good family, which I have. I have 4 great adult children, I have a great husband of 36 years. I think in the Catholic system, we take it very seriously. We never take away. We always add on. So we add to people's lives. We grow people. We give to them. It's about giving life. When those documents I read earlier, it's about allowing our children to flourish. So it's never a deficit. It's always hopeful. It's always being full of hope, being positive, having a positive mindset. So you can hear the Catholicism coming in with me. So it stands you strong as a system, because our system never takes programs away, if that makes sense. So if we think very seriously in the integrity of a school community, and that's why our schools work very, very closely with our school communities. And when something's brought in, it's not just because we like it or it's a good thing or whatever else. It fits who we are, and we invest. And what we're investing in is people's lives. So this is my steadfastness is to these children, because I owe it to them. So how do I have my life work balance? Easy, because I love what I do. That's one thing. That energizes you. Never be far from the child. That always energizes you. And I'm a mum of 4. So my children now range from 33 to 28. But also having an outside life, I'm very energetic. I have an outside life. I'm still a country girl. I'm up in the mountains each weekend. And and at the footy, so go Pies. I'm very much a Melbourne person, at the theatre. So I get out and about, and that's really important too. We work really hard here during the day, and we have a shared understanding and trust. So we have great trust within our school and our staff. We come certainly in time to prepare our rooms, but we can leave, just after our children. It's not about staying long hours. It's about the quality of the person and the quality of the work. And you can see that through your children, because our children and their outcomes and who they are as people is the result of good teachers. So, as I said, we're not a traditional type school. I do take, time when I need it. As we do as a team here, and the children see that, just as they have numerous teachers who work with them as well. So it is a true community.
Great philosophy of leadership. Does anyone else have a question for Barbara?
I was just disappointed to hear that the Catholic University doesn't send students for placement.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because one of my children's gone through Steiner, and we've got the Rudolph Steiner School out here in Warrenwood. And then she went and did her degree at a Australian Catholic University, and they recognised her Steiner course. And with that, she only had to do she'd already had a prior degree, so she only had to do about 13 months of the 2 years. And I thought that was really interesting, because we've pushed them for quite a while and nothing coming back. So once I get over this little hurdle and things are settling out for second semester, I am going back in there with a bigger agenda. We take a number of students, more than the other schools. We have 8 secondary schools that come through here as well. So the sector is very much dependent on us. We have OTs that come through from La Trobe Uni. So if it's not our Australian Catholic Uni, I might even go to La Trobe and say, you know what, would somebody like to do a PhD on wellbeing? Come down and see Montessori education. I might take that angle. And then our Catholic, Australian Catholic University it's just getting to the right person. I haven't got drilled through to the right person yet. And it's like a lot of things. COVID's taken a lot of early retirements and things. So I've just got to find who's still out there that gets that, who's been in it long enough to know the language I'm talking and go, oh, there's an opportunity. But we are putting together, my environmental sustainability teacher team are putting together a strategic plan to take to La Trobe and put it up for wellbeing for their PhD students. So it might just come through there. And their OT students, because they come on in and of course they gravitate to our Montessori rooms.
Barbara, I wanted to ask a question. How do we duplicate what you've got in this at your school there in other Catholic schools around the country?
As I said, with the Western Australia, they came straight over. So it's about just getting the word out there too. So all of what Montessori Australia is doing is, go you guys. The last couple of years has just been wonderful. Navigating was really difficult prior, and now I feel that it's, even the work you're doing so far is making navigating the Montessori world a lot easier. I look at our collegial groups, especially with our principal group that we've got, and it's across 3 sectors that we get together, because we're also got the public sector and we work with our northeast Melbourne. We've got Melbourne Montessori, and we're out there at Gisborne. So Peter and Daniel as well, they're together. So we've got the 3 sectors. I think that will take great, and we've got Ben from up at Beechworth. Also in public, I think that will take great traction, that there's 3 sectors coming together. We've just got to pull in our secondaries again to see what's happening out there now that we can, COVID's passed, see what's happening out in our secondary pathways. So that's another great way of getting it out there. But I think the more we do of this type of thing, I've just put out things to Australian Catholic. I was interviewed a few weeks ago. That's just come out in Australian Catholic magazine, just about holistic education around environmental sustainability and what wellness looks like. And of course, Michelle there, she knows how much she understands Montessori. So she put a nice little slant on that around, being in the environment and immersing the child within creation. So I think just more of that. So what I'll do here is our next step is to get our media team in, and we're strong enough now for them to come in and do a promo on our kids, let our children do it, and our parents, and get them to talk about it. And that can go out across our Catholic sector, not just Melbourne, but across Victoria and Australia. And I'm going to call on my Western Australia buddies and see how they're going. And maybe we can collectively get something happening as well. So I think it's just collectively doing things together and putting it out there on different platforms. Our parent group, they're an untapped source. So I think the more getting back into our parent education, and especially our early years sector, is a great asset, because I started this when we started this journey in 2019, there was only one Montessori early years within walking distance from me, just getting built. I have 6 now within a 2-kilometre radius, and they're right out through the our corridor here, because it goes along the green corridor, and more are happening every day along the Melbourne corridor. So I think that's an untapped source. We're going to get back out into our early years and use the parents there who are looking for something different to what we call traditional education. And I think that, and the ones we've already got in Montessori, like mine, who have hung on to it, and in those other schools from our collective, if we could do some collective parent education and then collective parent forums, and they get some parent publications out. I know I can hook into my Catholic Parent Victorian Association, and I'm sure the independents and the government sector have their parent platforms. That would be a great one. So I think our parents and kids will be the ones that lead it.
Barbara, thank you so much for this evening. It's always so interesting to talk with you, but it was great to learn more about the history of you and St. Pius.
Yeah, so I just want to thank everyone out there who's just starting to share their practices. There's so much online out there, of course, but I want to be authentic. and we want to be doing things properly by the child and the family. And I've just found this experience, even though I had to throw out, I felt like I was in a sinking boat and I had to throw out a flare. So thank you to all of you out there who went, okay, and heard my little breakdown. But I've come back stronger and with more clarity, because I can see a team at work, and there's a collective of us, and we're making it more visible. So one takeaway from tonight is, if we can keep making Montessori education visible and keeping to that authentic practice, of course, but making it visible, because there's a lot of young teachers and they're questioning. I've got 4 young adults myself. They're questioning the world. We're in no different of a time now of when Maria was in her time, of looking to the future through the young people. And, young people are questioning, they're discerning. And I think if we can make it visible to our young teachers, I've got one young teacher here, Grace, who's just taken it up and embraced it. And she didn't have any idea what Montessori is. So I think that's the message we need to get out, go to our young placement teachers, our young graduates, our young adults out there, through our families, and maybe through our secondary schools when they're considering their pathways into education. And if we can do that, then I think the young people will be a bit of the groundswell, because they're looking for something different. There's a big change in education already naturally occurring. And I think it's a great time for Montessori to stand strong and brave.
Yeah, it's true.
And take the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for your time, Barbara.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone for coming this evening. Good night, everyone.
Apologies for any of my cameras and stuff. I'm stuck in my office here at the moment. I don't work this late. I've just been with architects. So I'm bouncing around the screen. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Montessori Australia, for the invitation.
Thanks.
I know you chased me for a while, but it's good to be brave and just get up there and do it.
Good
What
on
we
you.
ask of our children.
Yeah.
So there you go. Don't do what you don't ask of your children, do yourself. So thank you. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.